Stick to your day job. Welcome back, listeners, or if you are new, welcome to the Digital Divide podcast. I am Justin Fry.
And I am Josh Charletto.
So let's go ahead and cut right to the chase, Josh. Wow. Cut to the chase.
Good start.
Josh. We're already starting it really well because, that's awesome. Last week we had myself go first. So I hate taking the show and starting with my news article. So go ahead. Explain to me some Overwatch League news.
Sure. So I know last time I mentioned that we would not talk about video games on the podcast.
Well,
however, we keep mentioning esports in various ways and at various times on the podcast. So I figured I would add this piece of news, which is from ESPN. The ESPN's website reported that Overwatch League, which Overwatch is Blizzard's first-person shooter that is also kind of like League of Legends, so it's a competition game.
Wait, hold on. Who's Blizzard?
Yeah. All right. Blizzard is a video game company that has been making great games for a very long time. And they made a game called Overwatch, which is a competition first-person shooter game. And Overwatch League, so the league of the game, as in like NFL type style league, right, is coming to ESPN, Disney, and ABC as like a stream and like a sport that you can watch.
Interesting.
So I can't believe it's going to be on ESPN. That's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And also Disney and ABC. But the big one for me is ESPN. So it's also, they're saying that it's not just, I feel like typically the off-kilter sports, if I could call it that, like the non-standard sports, usually get relegated to ESPN2.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not the case here. They're putting it on ESPN. So, I don't know. This is pretty big in my opinion. This is a big kind of a sea change for esports.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising too because it's a first-person shooter. So we're introducing already a sensitive topic that's been, it's been in the news for a while with guns and violence. We're now adding it to one ESPN, but more importantly, ABC and Disney. So that's why I'm actually really surprised. I don't recall off the top of my head what rating that game is, what Overwatch, if it's like teen.
Yeah, I mean, I want to mention that Overwatch, I would say, is one of the more muted, violent first-person shooters. Like, there's not gore and blood everywhere, right, and it's not realistic either. Like, it's very cartoony, kind of more fun.
Yeah.
So,
there's no blood.
Yeah, it's not as big of a violent game as some other ones, but I see what you're saying. It is kind of been, for better or worse, somewhat controversial these days, first-person shooters.
Well, at least making it mainstream in the sense where it's in our day-to-day news feed. Like, we're now going to see it through a channel that is widely watched by not just like the average Joe and Jane, but like we are going to be watching football on this channel, and now we can watch Overwatch.
That's where it's shocking and interesting and kind of cool to me that they're going to broadcast it on cable TV to a wide audience. So
people can actually get ESPN and cable. Last time I checked, I think it's one of the channels if it's a local channel.
So that's cool.
That is really cool. One cool fact is that I think on ESPN a long time ago, back, I'd say about 15 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, paintball was actually being broadcasted on ESPN. And that was a huge deal for those who were into like actual professional paintball. So it doesn't surprise me that ESPN is picking something like Overwatch and broadcasting it. I'm curious what, like, if it's going to be prime time when they're doing this, like what time they'll be broadcasting it. I imagine it's probably going to be something broadcasted in the end of the day or even towards the later evening, just for the viewers' sake. I'm pulling in those viewers, but I wouldn't be surprised that I find myself watching just a couple times one of these matches or see how they have it played out, because they really go to town when it comes to esports and how they the actual arena that they're playing in and just everything around it's all hyped up and crazy. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think what's so interesting about it is to see how they do it, when they'll broadcast it, what it will replace or
Mm-hmm.
kick out of the lineup, and when it will be. And then also, that means that they'll be taking it seriously in their coverage. So they'll have professional announcers.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to be neat. So kind of a
Yeah.
cool thing.
It is cool. It's good. It's good for the community. I think it's a positive. It's a positive win. Or it's a not a positive win. That's the double positive. It's a it's a milestone in esports being broadcasted on a Prime TV. I mean, I think really the only way you can get it nowadays is either through streaming services like Twitch, through I'm sure YouTube, and there's got to be some off really buried TV channel that you can get in DirecTV or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
well,
So that's cool. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time because we've already lied to our friends in Listenerville.
yeah.
So hopefully um, you can get past this 10 minutes. And Justin, what about your news article?
Nice segue. So this news article that I posted here in the show notes, and then obviously we're talking about it now, but is also really relevant with Apple and security. So what I mean by this is Apple has a pretty strong stance on user security, and they stand by their customers in securing their data and privacy, and specifically being really firm on the stance that if someone were to request said information of how to log into your phone, if something were to happen, say a crime scene and your phone's locked and they need to get in to gather data so they can have some evidence for the crime, Apple's been pretty strict on saying no, that's an invasion of privacy, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen that with several instances, even as of the last 2 years, 3 years, with the terrorist attack or I would say terrorist attack, but terrorist attack in California. Um, so this news article basically came out saying that Apple sneakily pushed out an update to iOS that would disable USB configuration, or the ability to use plugged-in USB devices. It's called USB restricted mode. What I mean by this is that if my phone now it were to be unlocked for more than an hour, what it does is that Lightning port is disabled, and any item other than charging, and any USB dongle that with Thunderbolt attachment plugs into my phone, it won't be accessible unless I unlock my phone. So what this means is, I don't know if people have been paying attention to this, and it's okay if you haven't, but there have been products created for police departments to basically crack phone passwords, and I don't want to say encryption because I'm not sure, so don't, trolls out there, please don't get me, but you can basically these devices are sold and provided to the police departments, and they take a phone, they plug it in, and after 4+ hours, this thing basically cracks the phone and lets you get in, and so they can pull the data they need. I love the fact that Apple kind of just sneakily slipped this into an update and said, "Oh, this is for security reasons. We want to make sure that if someone were to grab somebody's phone and steal it, that after an hour they can't use something to crack into their device and steal personal data." So I think this is great and makes me love Apple even more, even though it's really borderline. That's the word I'm looking for, Josh. It's borderline.
I don't know. It's kind of a gray.
It's like passive aggressive, but also saying, "But no, we're just doing it for the user."
Oh, yeah. I really like that aspect of it. I think that Apple always touts their privacy as one of their main features for their products,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's a big reason why I buy into Apple products. whether or not all of the things that they tout as privacy, I mean, we will never know necessarily
Hmm.
because we don't have access to Apple and their facilities and how they run their facilities and their
Right.
data. So we're, for the most part, on some of their features, taking their word for it. However, it's moves like this that give me peace of mind that they're being truthful
Yeah.
about them being private with our data and private with the way that they operate,
Right.
and not mining personal data. Um, and so while I could see how this might be misconstrued or construed, not misconstrued, as kind of a sneaky, under the radar type situation, I think this is a great feature.
Right.
Um, I really think that, I don't know, I think it's really great. I think that my initial reaction is like, yeah, why not? I mean, the phone itself is locked down anyway in terms of being locked if you don't have your finger or you
Yeah.
don't have your face
Yeah.
or you don't have the passcode. It's encrypted, so you're not going to get in there. And um, the part that makes it sticky is that you never want to make law enforcement harder when law enforcement is doing good work.
Yeah.
I'm
It
going to
gets
put that.
gray.
I'm going to put that in there and just say, let's just assume that it's all rainbows and butterflies and they're actually catching bad guys, whatever that
Yeah.
means. You never want to make that harder, and yet I truly believe in personal property and the law protecting personal property, and I really would like them to have to go to the judge to get a warrant for something like that. Um, and whether or not it should be to Apple to enforce that or to make that decision, I don't know. I don't want to say yay or nay because that's for the courts to decide. And I'm
Yeah.
not a lawyer. So, but either way, this feels great. I like this idea. And I like the fact that my phone would be more protected. So,
Yeah, and it's enabled by default when you update. So this is specifically the update is 11.4.1, and it automatically turns this on right away. Not to worry, you can obviously disable it. In the show notes, we did post a article that will to walk you through that. So I don't want to go into detail about it too much, but it's not foolproof. They're claiming that there could be an instance where it actually doesn't let you charge your phone because of some incompatibility with a USB device or a Thunderbolt plug-in. So there's obviously a risk that it actually makes your phone unchargeable until you've unlocked it, which isn't ideal, but uh, I think it's a good trade-off. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what comes out of this, if anything. I agree with you on the whole that we're hoping that the law enforcement is doing this for the sake of finding the bad guys or girls, depending on the way you look at it. But uh, it's really neat to see that I think Apple has our security as a priority. They're using
yeah,
security as a priority. So
that's one of my favorite features about them. And the big key here, that the first thing I thought of before reading the article and before you mentioned it, I'm like, okay, well that's great and all, but what about if I want to leave it charging? And yeah, you pointed it out a little bit earlier that it shuts everything down except for the charging
right,
feature. So it'll stop data transfers, it'll stop access to the phone over that connection, but it will still charge. So I think that's fantastic. And this is the type of thing that USB-C and the Lightning port on the iPhone make possible because they're that new advanced style port.
yeah,
They can allow for segregation of different features and different parts of the phone's capabilities, or give you digital audio. So, I mean, there's just so many advantages to using those kinds of ports.
yeah.
You can
To
do things
think
like this.
to think that back in the day we had things called headphone jacks. But yeah, it's cool. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but please, guys, take a look at that news article. Obviously, if you're an Android user, this doesn't pertain to you. So lucky you, I guess. As for moving into the next segment, we don't have follow up unless Josh, you've come up with something between the time we've talked about it and now. But
Nah, I could think of something, but that would be wasteful and useless.
Okay. Well, we don't have a useless or tasteless topic to talk about today.
Are you drunk?
I don't know.
Okay.
Depends.
At least you can admit it, right?
No,
That's the first step or something?
First, I think that's the first step in admitting a problem, but whatever. Today's topic really revolves around voice assistants and AI, mainly voice assistants, because within the last, I'd say about 5 to 8 years, we've had a huge insurgence of devices that have voice assistants, people using voice assistants for the greater good, for playing pranks on people. But really, I don't think really people understand like that this has been existent for quite some time, and it's been developing over 50-ish years. And now we're just getting into the heyday, into I would say the golden age of voice assistants, because now we've gotten to the point where it's become mainstream and people are using them on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to quickly start by explaining that there is a link in the show notes for the history of voice assistants, and I want people to take a look at it. And I don't want to go word for word because it's a very long timeline. But there are some areas that I've never heard of, and Josh, hopefully you have. I'm not trying to age you anything. I'm really sorry if I do.
It's almost like that's what our show is about anyway.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's the crux of it. So I'm assuming, do I need to explain what voice assistants are? Is that
I think so. I think it would be nice to list the big ones right now so that people can kind of gauge what we mean by voice assistant.
To clarify, what we're talking about is specifically your Alexa, your Google Assistant, and Siri. So,
okay, let me stop you right there, though. If we're going to make it through this episode, we need to not say her name.
Oh,
we need to say the Amazon Echo, because we don't want to mention any of their names. They're going to activate while people are listening to our podcast.
Okay, so the Amazon Echo.
There you go.
The home of the Google, because it's Google Home.
As long as you don't say
howdy
device, you're good to go. So
exactly.
Google Home is fine. So there's the Google Home, the Amazon Echo,
and
Apple's Siri.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So those are the big names right now. So I believe there are a lot of little players here and there, especially built into pieces of software.
Like Cortana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Windows. I always forget about Microsoft.
Don't let him hear you say that.
Yeah. It's not like I try to forget about them or anything.
Not like we use that at work. But anyways. But yeah, really it's those three, and then Cortana, I would say, would be the next. And Cortana is the voice assistant that you can get on Windows 10 and some Windows mobile phones. I don't even know if they still
I would say
exist.
That's what makes Cortana really difficult, is that she's mostly just built into the Windows operating system and not really as assistant-y. Yeah. More like a glorified voice search box.
I mean, she sounds like Cortana from Halo.
Yeah, I don't think everybody knows who that is.
Yeah, Cortana is amazing, but it is something interesting. But the main three are the Amazon Echo, or the Echo, Amazon Echo, the Google Home, and we'll call
Apple
it the
Siri.
HomePod, but Apple Siri. Yeah. Hopefully she doesn't respond to me while we're talking.
As long as you don't say hey and then her name, I think we're good on that front.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Hey dingus.
Hey dingus. But those are the three that people use regularly and have been emerging into mainstream products that are being created. The ability to work together with those products, aka thermostats, washer and dryers, but that's for later on. But the emergence, like I said, has just been really recently, within the last 5 to 8 years. But previously, we had other instances and very early versions of voice assistants. Specifically, there was something back in the day, the first digital speech recognition tool, which was the IBM shoebox. Never heard of it. I'm probably pissing off a lot of people right now. Hopefully not. Josh, I'm assuming you haven't heard of this, the IBM shoebox?
I didn't know what it was called. I knew they had quite a bit of work being done on speech recognition and speaking as input with computers.
Yeah.
I never knew what any of their, I was too young to know what any of their actual project names or what they were working on were. But yeah, I've never heard of Shoebox.
It only had 16 words. It says it only recognized 16 words and digits. I'm not sure if that literally means there were only 16 words it understood and 16 digits that it can understand, like 1 through 16. I have no idea. But
Probably. I mean, then probably the memory couldn't handle any more.
yeah. So that was the earliest stage that supposedly we can think of.
Do you know what year around or about that was?
You're holding me on the spot. I think it was the 60s. Real time follow up. It was about 1961. Yep, 1961.
Wow.
So we're going back to the 60s when people were where IBM was developing this. That to me is extremely shocking, but not really, because I feel like that's something that we would have immediately turned to as the computer is becoming more important and relevant in society. We're thinking of ways on how that can help us, and this is a perfect example of us at an early stage already paving the way for.
Well, and I would
today.
I would point out that this is before the computer became important in society,
Right.
because this is when they're basically just around inventing computers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're talking the early stages of computers.
Yeah.
Where
And they're
we
kind of
were,
exploring the boundaries of technology and how far they can push it. And I think that ELIZA, have you ever heard of ELIZA?
no,
That was around that time as well, but that was MIT who was working on artificial intelligence in theory. I'm going to put artificial intelligence in quotes because that gets thrown around a lot.
Mhm.
Regardless, it was the same concept. They were building a voice assistant slash voice recognition system that you could converse with as input into the computer. So they actually had an MIT artificial intelligence laboratory.
Nice. That sounds really, really,
Sounds
really
cooler than it
nerdy.
probably actually was.
Yeah, it's probably a closet with like a couple computers in
Closet
there.
with like, I don't know, like tubes and lights, and
I think of like the cans with the string going across.
it could probably do 1+1 and maybe 2+2, but that was it.
Hey, that was a big thing. I'm sure it would. I would have
was.
loved to be on the fly on the wall, and whenever they hit a milestone, I'm sure that was pretty crazy. And then like we jump along to the heyday of Windows Office, or sorry, Windows XP, and I surprisingly, and I'm not saying this as a negative thing, but Microsoft came up with the first speech recognition. God, I can't speak. Speech recognition software integrated actually in Windows XP. Which, Josh, I don't know if you've ever used that.
No, I didn't even know it was there.
Yeah, there's a reason behind that, I'm sure, because I don't even recall using Windows XP voice assistant. I didn't even know that was real. I just always used Clippy because Clippy was the coolest thing in the world.
Oh, Clippy.
But I didn't realize
you.
that I didn't realize Office XP allowed for voice recognition. I'm assuming it was basically just me speaking into a mic and it dictating essentially and typing it for me, which that's cool and all, but that's really, really early.
Well, so I don't want to cover too much of the history here, and I think we can cover some of the higher level points down the line a little bit more. But I do want to highlight that link that you have has the timeline, a visual timeline too, which is really neat. And you kind of touched on it just a moment ago. That was a huge jump in time. So you've got 1960s. There isn't much on this front from that point to the 1990s.
Yeah.
So I would like to point out that there was probably a lack of technology advancement that could allow for this type of thing to happen or actually be useful. They were probably really pushing against the boundaries. And so there's a lot of development time between that and when you get to the next phase in the 1990s and early 2000s rather.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting to see they've been, whoever they are, depending on the company, in one way or another working on voice assistance or voice recognition for a very long time before it actually comes into usefulness in the mainstream and into the home.
Right. The reason why I was going through the history too, and Josh, you're right, we shouldn't go through it because we're going to bore people, but like, I wanted to point out that like the first time we ever really saw something that we use today was April 14th, 2011. That's when Apple introduced Siri. So, or lady in a phone. But that's impressive because I would have, not to say Apple would be second to the party, but it tends to be that within the last couple of years that Apple produces things a little after the fact. But they came forth and paved the way and said, here's our product, here's this lady, you can speak to her through your phone. And I don't recall if it was specifically through the phone right away. I'm assuming it was, but kind of just put it in perspective that they were the pioneers, and now here we are, and we have three major competitors really just encouraging each other to build off the algorithms, make this better, make them respond faster, handle multiple commands. So it's just fascinating, I guess.
Well, and just a small correction there, because that's what I love to do, and
God,
that's where the fun comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually didn't build Siri; they bought Siri. So Siri was an application built by some small startup company in California, I believe. I don't remember the exact details, but they actually bought Siri and integrated it. And that was, what was that, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, when they put it in the iPhone?
They said they introduced it in 2011. When they actually put it in the iPhone, I couldn't tell you. I'm assuming probably shortly after that.
But they definitely were the first ones to start doing it on the phone, regardless of whether or not it's the best one right now. No, it's not. They definitely were the first ones to put it on the phone. I think, though, as you pointed out, the interesting part about the history, I would say, is the fact that it's been going on in development, whatever various shapes and forms, for that long. I mean, you're talking 40 plus years at this point that they've been working on voice assistance / voice recognition / voice input. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
And now we're here in 2018, and we've really turned a new leaf within the last year with the different mediums and products that we can use now. So now we've gotten to a point where the Amazon Echo has become, and really, to my understanding, not paved the way, but started the introduction of having these devices with the voice assistants in them. Josh, do you have a Amazon Echo? Or
yeah, we have a regular Echo, whatever that means. The lady in the tube.
The lady in tube, and we do as well. We have both the lady in tube and the little lady in the little tube. So, which is just the Echo Dot. But there have been, they really, I don't know how to explain this other than Amazon really kicked butt by putting this out there, and they've been selling the Amazon Echo like crazy, and they've been creating iteration after iteration after that. And they were on the market by themselves for a very long time, maybe 2 years, 3 years, but that's a really long time to be the sole market.
Yeah, well, and I think the interesting part about that is that they were on the market by themselves, but they had already, when they came to market, had a product that was so strong, and the only thing to compare it to at the time was Siri on the iPhone.
Right.
And it blew Siri out of the water when it was released. And still to this day, I think in a lot of ways it beats Siri. Siri is getting some love, hopefully, in the next iteration of iOS. But
Nudge, nudge.
yeah, but the Echo already has pushed forward and has been leading the market for some time. So do you have, oh, you just mentioned you have the Dot and the regular
Yes.
Echo, right? Do you have any of the other ones other than having Siri on your phone?
No, but at one point I had thought about getting the other ones, and the other ones we're talking about are the Google has the Google Home, which we mentioned
Right.
earlier, and they actually have Google Home, and then it's like Google Home Mini, which is basically the equivalent of the Dot, Echo Dot, and then they have the Google Home Max, which is this bigger speaker that really, I guess, is for music enthusiasts or audiophiles for you to listen to music better or with better quality, and then Apple just within the last, was it really only a year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Released the HomePod, which was Apple's equivalent of an Echo and Google Home. So we really only have those three main competitors out there in the market for the consumer to buy, and they really have skyrocketed or really changed from what they were originally. I think what they were originally intended to do. First, they were really just supposed to be quote assistants. They were supposed to assist with day-to-day activities. So, for example, I'm cooking food. I need a recipe. You can ask any of these devices. I don't know about Siri though, or the HomePod, but for sure, the Google Home and the Amazon Echo, I can ask them to recite a recipe for making ribs. I don't know, and they will recite it for you.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, were you going to say
No,
something?
good. No.
And now, with the years of germination of being out in the market, we have other things that are being connected. So we're coming to this whole new world. I shouldn't say whole new world, but in this world of smart things and Internet of Things and connecting all our household products to these devices to control them. Um, Specifically, like the Philips Hue lights, which I own a couple of. Josh, do you own any?
I don't. I don't have any of those. I do have a thermostat, the Ecobee.
Yeah, and all of these products that Josh and I just mentioned actually have some sort of integration with the Alexa or dang it, with the Amazon Echo. It's really hard not to say
It
the
is
name.
really, really hard.
You like train yourself. The Amazon Echo and like Google Assistant, I don't think I think there's more integration with Alexa to be honest. I don't know about like Google at all. I really don't think there is enough. But
There's a little bit.
right.
There's a little bit of different features, or I didn't say that right, but there's some things you can do with it, but not as wide as the Amazon Echo. And I think that's where they started out with a huge lead and where they have continued to keep their lead,
Yeah.
and something that the other two big names haven't, with Apple and Google, haven't really done as much.
Yeah.
And that is that it is pretty open, the Amazon Echo. Their
Oh yeah.
APIs for it are really open. And so there is so much integration from third parties.
Josh, what's an
And
API?
um,
I'm
it's
sorry, but
basically, I don't want to use the technical terms. It's basically an opening in the software that software developers can write applications against it so
right.
that they can connect to the device and use the device's features for their applications. So, in other words, we were just mentioning the Ecobee.
Mm-hmm.
So, the guys who work at Ecobee that developed the Ecobee software could write software against Amazon's API for the Amazon Echo and then tie into that and actually build that into their own application. So
Right.
it allows more features and it keeps a more open platform, which, say what you will about liking Apple, they don't do that usually.
Yeah, no.
So this is where Amazon has a huge lead and a huge advantage. And there are so many things that you can do with the Amazon Echo and so many products that tie into it. Like you mentioned, the Philips Hue lights,
Yeah.
the different thermostats. I mean, really the Echo can become kind of the hub of all of your smart home products.
Right.
And the other two, Google is trying to play catch up on that, and I don't mean the thing you put on your food, but they're trying to catch up to the
Nice.
product.
Dad
Not
joke.
so much. No, terrible. They're trying to catch up to the product with their own products, but also, in contrast, Apple is not doing this at all. Not yet, at least. And so the HomePod from Apple with Siri doesn't do any of this from what I've read. I mean, it's the basic Siri stuff that you can do on your phone, and then it plays music. So it's interesting because this year especially, but even last year, we had some questions around, well, what are these products and what are they really for?
Yeah.
Apple's product is really, really about playing really good music not really good music, rather having really good sound for music built into a compact speaker
Correct.
that can fill a room.
Right.
And the Echo is more about having decent sound, so not great sound like the HomePod, but decent sound, but having also a really useful assistant built in. So that's kind of a different take on it. And so who's going to win out? And right now it looks like Echo is doing a much better job.
Yeah, and the things that you can do with one another, there's a huge gap. And for example, for me, using the Amazon Echo, I have integrated it with my lights, the Hue lights. Jeez. The Philips Hue lights, where I can turn on, turn off by voice command. I can set like timers for them to turn off. It's actually really nice because, and this is going to sound really lazy, but I could have something in my hand and I'm walking up the stairs and realizing, shoot, I forgot to turn off my lights. I can talk to my Echo and say, hey, lady, please turn off the lights downstairs.
Hey, lady.
And I wouldn't be surprised if someone created some sort of API to allow you to say, or a service or a call out where you can actually trigger saying, hey, lady. But that's another topic. But yeah, and I have the ability to do that. Josh can tell the lady in a can to turn down the air conditioning or turn up the heat. You can stop fans. I mean, you really can do anything. Play music. Obviously, that's one of its more the selling points of using it. But you can connect these things to pretty much everything. And now you have companies creating really cheap and inexpensive smart device or smart enabling devices, which I find fascinating. And even those have like their own built-in API for the Amazon Echo, which blows my mind. I can get an outlet adapter. I plug into my outlet, take an analog. That sounds stupid. Quote, analog light, or just a generic light, plug it into that, and now it's become a smart light because this dongle or this adapter is connected not only to the Wi-Fi, it's connected and can be commanded through the device itself or through the Amazon Echo or whatever you're using. So
yeah, essentially you can make any device plugged into an outlet smart.
Yes.
Smart in quotes, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, analog in the same way that nuclear power is analog.
Is that a reference to Pacific Rim?
It absolutely is. Good job. I want to actually highlight something that I feel like the magic of the Echo, it has so many great features and ties into so many things, which we keep saying over and over again, and I apologize, but that's great, but the magic is how well it hears you and how well it picks up what you're saying and actually executing on it. And that's why they are as good as they are. And we'll get into why in a second, but Siri is great, and I use Siri a lot for various things on my phone, but it's got one microphone, or two microphones, I think, actually. And so you have to be pretty close in proximity to the phone for her to understand you and to get it right. And sometimes even then, she doesn't get what you said correct.
Right.
And when we bought the Echo, I bought it for my wife as a Christmas present because she loves music, and she's thrilled with this thing because she can just yell out a song and listen to music all day long if she wants to.
Exactly, yeah.
But the magic happened when we pulled it out, we plugged it in, and the things that the Amazon Echo picks up from across the room or even across the house is astounding.
Yes.
It's really, I mean, it's got, I don't know how many mics built in, but it's definitely not two. It's way more than two. And because of that, you can speak in a normal tone and be across the room and it will understand what you said. And that's where these devices step away from these magical doesn't actually work device, you have to be a nerd to have it, into the land of it's an appliance and it just works the way it should, and I use it for all kinds of things because it always works.
Right.
And so that's where you get people who aren't early adopters getting excited about these products because they actually work as advertised.
I actually bought, or I had my father-in-law come out and we went to our house when we moved here, and we had bought an Amazon Echo, and he started watching us use it, and he like started yelling at the Echo and fell in love with it because of the things you can do with it, and to the point where we bought it for him for I think his birthday, and then the same thing happened to my mom, who when she went to go use it, she's like, "Oh, that would be really helpful for doing this, this, and this, and for like um, adding to the grocery list, helping with cooking, where she can get the recipes recited to her." And so then we bought that for her, and it's crazy because like I'll show up at their houses and they're using it like it's a day to day, like it's just a part of the routine now. Is oh hey blank, give me my daily update for today, or hey please set a reminder for me to do this, this, and this at blank PM, or play a song for me. It's amazing that people, like you just said, who might not be early adopters and may not be tech savvy can buy these products and sure still have somebody help them set it up. But after that, they just go with it and really make it a useful tool for themselves. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens, in my opinion. That's where the fun really is. I mean, my kids love asking questions because more often than not, I almost said her name, Amazon Echo will have an actual useful response. And I want to be fair, Siri can do a lot of that as well, but Siri pulls it from Wikipedia.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I don't know where Amazon gets the information. So, but just to again highlight all the different things you can do and all the different questions you can ask the Echo. I almost said her name. Every Friday they send out a newsletter with, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 bullet points on new things you can ask Alexa. Oh man, Josh, really?
Oh, you've just enabled all the people's of all their devices.
Terrible.
We have to change the frequency of the way you said it because then it won't actually activate it.
I'm gonna have to beep those out in edit. Anyway, you can say, "Hey, lady in a tube, tell me about giraffes," and she'll have an answer. Or, "Hey, lady in a tube, why did X, Y, and Z happen?" Or, "What years were the such and such?" She can play games. She can do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And the fun is when they send out the Friday newsletter and maybe the new Star Wars movie is out. And so they add in like a quick Star Wars reference question that you can ask as well, and she'll get that right too. So it's just a lot of fun, and it's reliable, which is really the key to their success on this product, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that it's only going to grow as people adopt it more and more and realize that it is that reliable and useful.
Yeah, and we've already seen that it growing as it is because we're seeing it now, specifically the Amazon product. We're seeing it in things like our cars. Like there are cars that have Google Assistant / the Amazon Assistant integrated into these newer cars where you can ask the same sort of questions, possibly ask the same sort of commands to turn your lights on. I'm sure there's got to be some restrictions behind that, but like we're moving to the age where this is solid enough. We're integrating it in everything. And granted, some people might not want to have that in their cars. Some people might not want to have their washer, dryers, and their stove, ovens, anything that could actually cause harm, be connected to something like this. It might be something that's standoffish. I totally understand, but the fact that we're integrating in this makes me really think that we're already one step closer to really having a true smart home, like that movie on Disney called Smart Home or Smart
Yeah,
House.
I CarPlay is a huge thing for me in my car. It's what I was referring to last week in my rant about putting the beta on my phone. I rely on it in my car so much because it's illegal and I don't pick up my phone to look at it while I'm driving. I
Good.
respect the law, and being able to not take my hands off the wheel and ask questions or tell my phone to do things. I'll say, "Hey Dingus," I'll press a button on my steering wheel and say, "Hey Dingus, get me directions to Target." And
Boom.
she says, "Okay, here's the nearest Target. Pick a different one in the list, or I'll start directions to that." And then the directions begin and I'm on my way. And I don't have to like touch my phone. I don't have to confirm anything. I give it one command. Or I'll say, "Hey Dingus, call my wife," and she makes a phone call. Or, "Hey Dingus, tell Justin Fry he's an idiot." And then,
True
Justin Fry
fact.
gets a text message from me from my car. So I can tell her to read my text messages. I don't even have to look at the screen ever. And that's the beauty of these types of devices with the input. And as the progression continues, it's only going to get better and better.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's where I'm excited about it.
I mean, really, Josh, it's been 2 years that we've been really getting a lot of this.
That is crazy to think about.
Yeah, you're telling me. The first, what? Hold on, I got to look at this to be exact. But
Are
the
you
first,
sure that
the
it's
first,
only been 2 years?
the first Amazon Echo was available to Prime members only in 2014, but in
Okay. Okay.
2016, sorry, 2015 and into 2016 is when we started to actually see the Amazon Echo and Dot, etc., hit mainstream. So yeah, it's only been really 2 years since we've had that. 27 in 2016, the Google Home came out. In,
That is
in
crazy.
2017, then we started getting really crazy with all the services that they're using and all the other products. So yeah, it's. I mean, even oh my gosh, sorry to get off topic, but in June 26th of last year, yeah,
Uh-huh.
Google Home launched in Canada.
Wow, that is crazy. And that's I'm pining for different features and different things to happen on my Echo and on Siri and on Google Home. Like there's some really basic and fundamental things that can be so useful and really improve the experience. And I feel like we're just waiting for it, and yet it hasn't been that long. But I
Yeah,
mean, one of the big ones for me is the device. Okay, so the Echo can understand what you're asking, but you can only ask it one thing at a time. And they're already addressing this in the newest products, but you can only really ask it one thing at a time. I want to be able to say, "Hey Dingus, play," I don't know what, I don't want to name a song because then people make fun of me. "Play a song at volume 5 and turn it off in 15 minutes."
I know a song that you would love to hear play.
Shh, no, no, no talking. So, so I don't need to be trolled on my own podcast. Thank you. So I think that that's where something really simple and straightforward could really improve the experience.
Yeah,
Um, and being able to ask complex commands or string them together. And again, I'm pretty sure the next update to the Echo is a is has that built into it, or at
yeah,
least they mentioned that at one point. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the improvements and what changes.
yeah. And I think we kind of already see it with Siri because Apple had announced for the next iOS update in the fall that they have like it's basically Siri shortcuts. And now it doesn't necessarily mean that I can ask Siri to do four different things at the same time, as in like, okay, set a reminder for this, turn off the lights at home, turn up my AC to blank, and call dad. Like it's not gonna be able to do that still, but what this enables through the Siri shortcuts is enable like a workflow of uh, I'm on my way home, do X, Y, Z. So what it's going to do is Siri is going to receive that command and then it goes out and then sends an email or send a notification to your thermostat to raise the temperature or lower the temperature, to turn the lights off in one room or on and off. So like they have that kind of built in, but it's not, you're not asking it to do four things via voice. You've already programmed it, like you've
Yeah, so
written it
you
out.
make like a list of things to do,
Yeah,
like for the device to do
right.
when you give it a specific command.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's just another sign that we are getting to that. And like you just said, Amazon had mentioned and should be bringing this with their next line of products. That'll be the day. That'll be that next step in which we. I'm curious to see what that creates. By
Yeah.
creating the ability to do that, what that creates for the products that are out there and future products to come. So
Yeah, and I think that Siri feature is I think that Siri feature coming is really great. I actually the application they built that off of and based that off of is actually called Workflow, and they bought that a couple of years ago,
right.
which I still use Workflow and love it to death. I actually have a workflow. This is going to sound super nerdy, but okay. So my workflow, a really big workflow that I use is when I pull into work. There's a geofence around work that I have. It will actually email the time that I came into work to my work email and give me like a timestamp so I know what to put down for my timesheet.
Wow.
And it will also, at the same time, put that same timestamp and date into a Google spreadsheet. So I have a Google spreadsheet that's been running for X years. I don't even remember. I think it's 2 or 3 years now, with all the timestamps for when I came to work and left. So it does it both ways. It when I come to work, I walk into the geofence, it timestamps it and sends me the email, puts it on the Google Sheet. And then when I leave, it does the same thing. It sends when I left to my email, and then it puts it on the Google Sheet. Being able to activate that kind of thing from voice without having to fumble with going into apps, which right now it doesn't. It's built in a way that I don't have to do anything manually. My phone is just picking up that I'm moving into that geofence.
Yeah.
But being able to string commands together like that and then just say, hey dingus, X, Y, and Z, and then have that string of commands execute is super powerful. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm downloading it right now because I've never created workflow or a
Oh, it's
workflow,
great.
and
I
I
have
think it,
one that like we're totally off topic now, but like I have
okay.
one where um, one thing that bothers me that is harder to do on iOS because you don't have Windows, you don't have Windows lowercase Windows, not Windows the operating system.
Modal Windows.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little bit harder to do is share links in a useful way. So you share a link on a computer. Sometimes you can copy and paste the link, but also copy and paste real quick the title,
Mm-hmm.
say, of a web page. I have a workflow where I say, "Oh, I want to actually share this." I'll activate the workflow, and the workflow will grab and store both the title of the web page and the link, and then it will format it correctly and then stick that into my clipboard. So then I can go to any other app and just like hit paste, and it has a the title and then um, the link as well
Oh,
right below it. So it looks really good and it's easy to read and very useful. So it's little things like that application or app fills in the gaps. And I'm excited that they built that into Siri,
mm-hmm.
where you can then tell Siri to do these things. Now, I will be very interested to see how many people will actually be doing that with their phones. Like, I find that super cool and interesting. So, of course, I'm going to be doing this like crazy and find all kinds of different ways to try and use it. But how many non standard, or rather, how many people who don't get into that type of thing will be actually using this feature? And I wish sometimes that Apple would publish numbers like that and tell us.
Yeah.
Obviously, none of the companies do that. They never give you those kind of numbers. But I would give anything to see that spreadsheet of, okay, who's actually using it, at what times, for how long, for what devices, and really take a look at that data. I have a feeling that while it's going to be there, until they have it actually close to AI where it builds some of those workflows for you or suggests them,
Yeah.
it's not going to be as widely used as I think that they hope.
Yeah, that actually creates a question for me on we have these wonderful products. We have the Amazon Echo, we have the Google Home. They are doing all these great, wonderful things of automating our lives. Two questions come to mind. One, how this generation now, like the current young generation, the kids, the current kids that are growing up. I don't know I can't remember the name of the generation.
It doesn't matter. The
But
kids.
regardless, the kids that are growing up now, the generation that's growing up now, they're accustomed to this already. So I'm curious to see really well how they use these devices as they get older, and how reliant they get on, reliant upon they get on. If it just becomes something that they're used to and expect to be available for them. So I just wonder how that will play into the future of this. There's going to be a generation that even after that will have further voice assistants to do much more complicated, we would hope, much more complicated tasks. And that's when we start to think of, like, is this really becoming less of a utility or more of, sorry, we're moving away from, my opinion, what is now a luxury here for us, but a utility for the future. So
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting thing about it is I would argue that right now they aren't accustomed to it. You just mentioned it's only been about 2 years, 3 years that
right.
this has really come into its own. But we know it's going to be expanding and becoming something bigger and crazier and way more useful and way more ubiquitous throughout everything that you do in your daily life. It's going to have a big, sweeping, changing effect, especially when you parallel it with the fact that this goes hand in hand and is usually developed with whatever the company's working on for AI. And as soon as you start talking about the fact that these devices are responding to basic commands, but when you start adding in AI, they're going to be
building up on it.
Yeah, just I mean, I don't want to be crazy here, but limitless. They'll be limitless. I mean, there's just so many different things you can do with them,
Yeah.
and they they'll bring a function to life that we won't be able to understand right now. We can't even predict it. So I agree. It will be very interesting to see how future generations not only will be changed and be changing the world with this stuff, but I'm just interested to see how this changes input into the devices that we use and output.
Right.
I mean, if you're sitting at your desk, do you really need to be staring at a monitor constantly, or can the thing in your ear be telling you? You can ask it a question; it'll tell you something, and then you can say, "Can you send a message to Julie that says we need those by end of day, and that she needs to include X, Y, and Z?" And then it's done, and then you get up and go get coffee.
Yeah.
It's the next step. It's the next evolution, and we have these input devices, the keyboard and mouse, that have been around for God knows how long, the 60s, the 70s.
Right.
And we're pining for new input devices, input ways.
Yeah, it definitely starts to build off of what we have now, and we'll see what it gets phased out in the years to come. And that's why I said it's more of a luxury now for us, because we're just experiencing it.
Yeah, totally.
We're enjoying it. We're like, hey, look at this cool thing I can do, or hey, look, I can have my hue lights do like basically a rave and cycle through the colors. That's so cool, huh? Where this might actually turn into the fact that it's a utility now, so everybody uses it on a day-to-day basis to do their day-to-day activities, whether it's cooking dinner or putting the kid down in bed. You never know. Like it could become that next step in like evolution for us technologically to become reliant upon these said devices rather than just thinking it as a cool thing to do. So
yeah,
it definitely paints a picture of this isn't all perfect, flower and roses, and there's obviously a negative side to having these objects and these utilities right now. and I don't want to get negative about it, but we could become dependent upon it, and that can be seen as something negative, something as us becoming lazy and relying upon other things to do our jobs. But it's still something cool and can, in the right way, can be spun to be a good benefit to help us further improve, ourselves as humans. So um, that's my personal opinion, and you can obviously disagree, but
I think it'll take time to get to that point if it does. I think that's evident in the fact that even just voice recognition as input into text fields for me feels super unnatural in the same way that like selfies feel unnatural to me.
yeah.
And I think I've heard different anecdotes and stories about kids growing through school with iPads, going
Yeah.
through school with iPads rather, that don't type on the iPad. They actually just tap the microphone and start speaking.
Right.
And to me, that's not natural. I still have a hard time. I use it all the time. I force myself to use it because sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more convenient, sometimes I just like watching the words appear as I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to really sit and think as I'm speaking. How am I going to say this? Do I need to say period at the end?
Yeah. What
Can I
happens
say
if I?
new line? How does that work? Right? So like we have so much muscle memory built in for keyboards that it feels unnatural to me to just be speaking at this device and say, whatever I want to say to it. Whereas a lot of the kids, as you mentioned before, are already feeling like they can just, the world's their oyster as long as they can speak to the device and input text.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
I already have problems trying to say it, talk in general, as everybody knows. So if I were to use these devices, I'd have to find a way of backspacing, but I'd be saying backspace the entire time because I would just word vomit things and have to
You know what
correct
though?
myself.
I in in my limited experience and as much as I try to use it, the best times that I have had using it have been where I stop thinking about it and I just ramble. I'll just say what I'm saying, and I've gotten into the habit of saying period and comma at certain points, but you just speak and then you look and see what came up, and then you just go back and quickly tap a couple times to make a couple edits here and there, and then you're done. So um, I think that's where you start getting into the usefulness of voice recognition. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I don't want to cut off and not give our recommendations on this. What I mean by this, I mean like what can we tell our our listeners, like what devices would work best for them? Is there somewhere I can start into this wonderful world? Is there a cheaper way of doing it? Like what can I do, Josh, to get myself into the voice assistant world?
yeah. Well, I think it starts with your phone. You already have a voice assistant on your phone, so try it, see what you think. Um, Siri for me is very, very useful. I yell things at Siri all the time, and 80-90% of the time, 90-95% of the time, she gets what I'm saying, and actually, it's very useful. If you're looking to have a lady in a tube in your house, I would say if you don't have ties to Google, I would go with the Amazon products.
Yeah.
I would start where you and I did with the regular Amazon Echo. Or if you have a Prime account, even if you like Google stuff and you have a Prime account, the Prime account makes the Amazon Echo all the better.
Yeah.
So I would start with that because the Echo is the one to beat right now. However, if you're like a die-hard Google person, the Google Assistant, from what I understand, and I haven't used it, but from what I understand, built into the Google Home is actually really good and pretty decent. It's not Echo level, but it's close and closing. So if you're a big fan of Google products, like you want to be able to, and see, the Echo does a lot of that kind of stuff. But if you want to add things to your calendar,
Yeah.
or ask about your Gmail, go with the Google Assistant on Google Home. But again, I don't know. The Alexa just does so many things and has a lot of that built in anyway. You can just find out who built something against the API and just tie your Google account to it. So I don't know. I still am hard pressed to recommend anything other than the Echo. It's just so good.
Yeah.
So as far as Lady in the Tube goes, Alexa, you're awesome.
Yeah, and I would like to second that. Essentially, one, because of the cost is basically the cost of all devices except the HomePod are relatively the same and
Yeah.
are and do go on sale quite often. And specifically, Amazon's products right now. I mean, we're about to hit Prime Day in a couple days.
I was going to say Prime Day's coming up.
So on the 16th, I think it is.
Yeah,
so
perfect time to get an Echo.
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if at that time there comes a deal for like buying 2 dots, get one free or something, where the Echo is on sale for $20 cheaper or $30 cheaper. So I think I bought mine during Christmas for about, I think it was $80, and then I got a dot for $20.
Yeah, that's what I paid for it. It's
so
great.
Yeah, and if you can wait till Christmas and get them, I highly recommend it. But it's not as expensive as you think. Still $80. I can understand that being expensive, but the amount of utility that you'll get out of that $80,
totally worth it.
Well, yeah, I've definitely used my $80 worth within 2 months of having it. So cool.
And you don't have to have the subscription to Prime
correct.
To use it. You can use it without, and it's great.
Yeah.
I do want to mention one thing real quick on the HomePod front. That's Apple's Siri-based Lady in a Tube speaker. I can't recommend that one. I really can't. Unless you have to have Apple Music, the service Apple Music is what I'm talking about. And you have to have the best sound, like Sonos level sound.
Yeah.
Go with that one. But again, you're spending $300 something, which is unbelievable. The fact that they have it at $300 something, it better sound amazing. The Echo sounds really good. I wouldn't say the best. It's still one speaker, but it's got a decent level of bass. It sounds pretty clear. I would have to hear the HomePod. I can't believe that it would be that much better where I'd want to spend an extra $200 for it. So I have to say that if you're going to pick one up, grab the Echo and skip the HomePod.
Yeah, and there are caveats to all three of them. As you just mentioned, the HomePod allows you to play Apple Music if you're a subscriber to it, where if you use like the Amazon Echo, it doesn't have the ability to use it. However, or to use Apple Music. However, you can through Bluetooth connect to the Amazon Echo and play it from your phone.
Right.
It's just it's not fully integrated. So I just want all those who are after this, after they listen to this podcast, go and purchase one of these items. Make sure you look at what you can do. If any of the services that you are subscribed to are supported, because you don't want to. The last thing I want someone to do is buy a HomePod for some reason and think that they can have full integration with like Amazon Music, which, I mean, let's be honest, if you did that, that'd be kind of silly, but
you never know.
You never know. There's probably people out there. And
that is one interesting point. They all have Bluetooth built in, so you can connect any device to it and play music or play the audio from that device over Bluetooth.
You just won't be able to say, hey, Lady in the Tube, play, if you're using if you're using Apple Music and you don't have a Spotify subscription or Amazon Music subscription, you can't just say, hey, Lady in the Tube, play the Beatles song, a Beatles shuffle, a Beatles playlist. There you go. I can speak now. So you can't do that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that covers, or at least it covers a good section of voice assistants. I think we will eventually talk about more like the AI sort of things, but for that's another day. So
yeah, someday.
Let's move on to some people's favorite thing called Rant Corner. I disagree, but it's totally okay. I'm going to start off with a rant today, if you don't mind.
Oh, please, by all means.
So, rant for today. And this is such a millennial thing to do, so I'm totally, really digging myself in a hole about this whole rant thing. But anyways,
I don't know. Just real quick, there are a lot of podcasts that are non-millennial podcasts that do this, so I don't think it's just a millennial thing.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, well, now you do.
Now I know. Now you know. Anyways, One of my biggest pet peeves, and this applies for a lot of people. Um, WebMD is being used as a resource for medical information for the average Joe and Jane to find out, hey, I might have bronchitis or something like that. And that's great. And it was, I'm sure, created in the intent to help the day to day person figure out, do I need to go to the doctor or not? However, there is a different caveat to it where I think it is adding to those who have the need to know, or the urge to try and figure out or assume that some of the symptoms they are having is actually related to a disease or something that's wrong with them, and they have this urge to look at WebMD, figure out, okay, I have these symptoms. Oh my gosh, I have lupus, or I have, I don't know, something ridiculous, and they stress themselves out, and they go to the doctor, and they're like, oh, I have this. I must have blank, and the doctor's like, no, you just have a bad stomach ache. You're fine. Like, WebMD to me has been the bane of my existence because people that I care about are always looking at it, and they get themselves overwhelmed with it, some of the information that comes from it, and it's just a shame because it was obviously created for the greater good, for a good reason, for those to get access to information to really tell them, hey, should I go to the doctor or not, without feeling like they're uneducated, or that's not the word I want to use, but they're looking for answers and want to know, do I need to go to the doctor or not? That's basically what I'm saying. And
It's hard to keep it vague,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's super really hard to keep it vague. I just want people to just take it with a grain of salt. And
You know what? I can do one better, actually.
what?
Instead of taking it with a grain of salt, which you should do, why not cross-reference it with other sources? Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Or like call the
We should
doctor
teach the internet
directly.
how to do that anyway. Yeah, or call the doctor directly and ask questions. Say, hey, I saw this. I'm not saying that's what it is, but maybe you could tell me more about it.
Right. Yeah, and I I hope people move away from this, and that, and I know WebMD does post it on their website specifically as like a warning, like, don't take this to heart. You please see a practicing doctor if you have any of these symptoms or think you do. Call them. And, like, it specifically calls that out, but I just feel like this definitely has it's a double-edged sword, and it's unfortunate, and it drives me nuts. I just wish it would never be introduced in my life. But
I am going to conflict with you on it a little bit, even though that's not what this section should be about.
conflicting
I
rant.
think, yeah, I think that it's a certain type of personality who's going to do that, no matter what website it is.
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't called a WebMD and they just went and found, some person talking about it on Facebook saying that they have the pox or something, and then now they heard that and they think that they have that same crink in their neck and they need to ask questions of the doctor. Like, I just think that there's a certain personality that seems to draw towards that and act that certain way
Yeah.
about that kind of stuff. And it's less about WebMD and more about them. So,
Yes.
just cross-reference your stuff. Maybe do a little bit more research. Take some time to think it through. Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
those people can get out of hand, and it's like, take it easy, breathe, go find some other information first.
You're not gonna die.
Yeah, good rant, because that is a thing, and people do that all the time.
Yes. So tell me about your rant today.
I was gonna do one, and then I decided to change it. So we have a problem in our neighborhood, and it's annoying.
Wait, hold on, hold on,
And
hold on. Do you have
sure,
trouble right here in River City?
I don't know what that reference is, so I'm gonna
Okay.
keep going.
All right.
What is that reference?
It's the Music Man.
Well, I should know that. I was in that play. Anyway, so um, we get a lot of solicitors, and I just want to say, solicitors, knock it off. And I don't mean knock on my door. I mean, get out. Don't come over to my house. Leave us alone.
Did you not get the sign that says no solicitors?
We haven't yet, but I'm going tomorrow to buy one because, a great example this evening. some gentleman came to tell us about Jesus,
Oh
and they knocked
God.
on the door at 7 p.m., like pounded on the door. Didn't press the Ring doorbell that I installed to talk to them. They pounded on the door. And so then we activated the Ring doorbell and said, "Go away. Leave us alone."
Oh, that's great.
So, solicitors, I know that you're listening to this 100% for sure that you are listening to this. You are one of the now 3 people who listen to this. Stop it and go away. You're annoying.
I wish I would have been a fly on the wall when you said go away from the ring. I think probably freaked out. Like, what the heck?
I think they knew what it was because in the video you can see them, at least one of them, look at the doorbell, and that's when they pounded on the door. So it's like, oh, okay, that's just rude.
Wow.
Knock it
Right.
off. Yeah. So good times, solicitors. And you know what? I just want to put this out there for people. The amount of times that I have bought something from somebody at my door, like knocking on my door, is 0 and will continue to be 0. I will always buy stuff at the store or from the internet, so knock it off.
Sorry, Cub
Especially
Scout.
Jesus. I'm not going to buy Jesus at the door, for goodness sake.
I feel so enlightened. Ah. Well, I think that's it for this episode, and this is our 10th episode. So it's been a crazy ride, and we're continuing to move forward. So it's crazy to think, as I said every episode, that we're already 10 episodes into this. So
I know we say this every time, but I can't believe it's been 10 weeks.
yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it has been crazy. So we want to thank you guys all for listening. And if you have liked this episode specifically or any of our other episodes, please give us a review on iTunes or anywhere you're actually listening to this podcast. That little bit helps, even if you're sharing it to your friends, your family members. Getting the word out helps us spread the word of the podcast. We're not advertising this anywhere else through paid services. We're strictly really doing this through word of mouth. So any help, anything you can do to help, we're more than happy to. Or if you just want to keep it to yourself, that's great. Keep it to yourself. I'm okay with that. But any help is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, this is a fun hobby for us, and we really enjoy it.
Yes.
And we're hoping to improve and make it more entertaining, and potentially we're open to suggestions, changing things or adding things or removing things or whatever we need to do. So
Yeah.
that's the most helpful, is tell people about it and give us feedback. We're looking forward to that kind of stuff.
Right. And you can easily do that through several ways. One being we actually are specifically our website, the www.digitaldividepodcast.com. There's a way to contact us through there. Email address that once you comment, you make your comment in the contact us and send it. It goes to our askdigitaldivide@gmail.com. Pretty simple. If you don't like using any of those mediums, you can even go through Twitter and tweet towards us or DM us at Digital Divide PC. We love getting feedback, like we just said. So any medium, there's literally several mediums you can do this for us. So we don't care which one, as long as it comes to us, we will take it. We also have a Patreon. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but if you want to do something more and you've shared it to all your friends and you're really, really generous and want to donate $1 every month or however however generous you want to get, we're okay with that too. It will strictly go to benefiting and increasing the quality of the product that we're creating here, the podcast, and so forth. Eventually, as things move on, we'd like to give you guys some more benefits of being part of the Patreon, whether that's episodes that we've recorded in the past that never made it to live or specific, I don't know. You never know if we can do merch. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But there could be
seen.
Yeah, it's yet to be seen, but there's definitely possibilities. If you like us that much and want to individually follow us, you can get me at Twitter, or follow me at Twitter, sorry, at JustinFry121. That's Justin, last name Frye, not Fry. I'm not a French fry. 121. And Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at jcharletto. So my first initial, last name CIARLETTO. Or you can email me at josh@charletto.com. Or if you can find Josh Charletto on Facebook or Instagram or Google Plus or Pinterest, you can find me all over the place. So I'm on all those. So cool. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Well, until next week, everybody take care.
Bye.